Okay, so you've been here for the past 50 years, is that correct?
Yes, this would be I'm completing my 53rd year at Illinois.
Right? Wow, fantastic.
After year one as a soft money assistant professor.
Up through now as a professor emeritus.
That's right.
Right, fabulous. Who comes into his office every day still. Wonderful. You have been listed among the outstanding teachers here at the University of Illinois during most of the semesters you've taught since 1970 when the list was first compiled. What makes you such an outstanding teacher?
Interest in teaching and commitment to teaching. Interested in young people and their futures and their ideas is a good starter.
Sure.
And then on top of that, you use whatever skills and knowledge you have.
What do you think are some of the foundational skills that you have that make you such a good teacher?
Well, in years gone by, I would have said I can give a good lecture, and I still can upon occasion. But for many years now, I've been more, I have not been a stand-up teacher lecturing, or seldom during a semester. I like to give a couple of lectures just so students see I can do it, and in order to lay out a body of material that I can't lay out in discussion. But in both my research and in my teaching, I feel we've got to provide more space for the student, for student ideas, for student initiative.
Oh, great. So student-centered, some of those things. Well, we'll hear more from your students about what they think about you as being a good teacher and a good mentor in a bit. So your book, Becoming a Nation of Readers, 1985, with Alfreda Hibert and Judith A. Scott and Ian A. Wilkinson, is one of the most widely read books of all time in the field of literacy, and it has more than 2,000 citations. Tell us about your research in this area in terms of early reading development.
All right, well, I have not done a large amount of early reading research with English.
Okay.
Ironically, the language where I have done early reading research is Chinese, but we need to understand, I have done throughout my career research on higher level processes, not decoding and the print, and that was true at the time that we did Becoming a Nation of Readers. So my foundational research would have been on reading comprehension.
Okay.
But a book like Becoming a Nation of Readers is not a report of your own research. It's a synthesis of what is known by a whole field, and a special tack that makes Becoming a Nation of Readers stand out from other national reports. For instance, the round of reports that Catherine Snow sponsored some 25 years after Becoming a Nation of Readers. But we wrote Becoming a Nation of Readers for ordinary teachers and parents rather than for other scholars.
Okay.
So probably that's what makes it really distinctive.
So what were some of the main themes for these, for the everyday person in terms of the parents and teachers of the book? Some of the main takeaways.
Yeah, I'm wondering how after all these years I can find a takeaway that's still relevant for today, Audrey. I suppose there's I'll mention something that might be unusual, but continues the theme of what we were trying to do in that report. I suppose respect for the complexity of the teacher's job, how well most teachers do it most of the time would be a major takeaway. And it was not to say that everything was hunky-dory then, or we could say the same at any point in time, I guess. But really, the teaching profession does a really good job, but difficulties are faced, and they're not ones that there'll be some little jiffy solution to. We will not eliminate individual differences among children. There will be an array of children who present themselves in every classroom. And you can try to cope with that in various ways. And some solutions, every attempted solution will pose new issues that a teacher has to deal with.
I would say that that is very profound and very relevant today, particularly in terms of current educational policies and reductionistic moves to dismiss that complexity and overlook it entirely. So I think that's a really, really great takeaway from your book. Now, what is that, 20 years ago?
No, it's more than that. It was 1984. It's 30 years ago.
30 years ago, okay. So your wife, Dr. Jana M. Mason, notes that you have changed the field of reading and cognition. You have connected the theoretical cognitive psychologists with the educators, helping them understand how to learn from each other. She notes that as one of your most significant accomplishments in terms of your career. Your former student, Dr. Jingjing Sun, explains that you have not only installed in her heart the passion of searching for the truth, you have also taught her to keep the genuine curiosity about children, their thinking processes, dialogue in the classroom, social interactions with peers, etc. Your former student, also, Dr. Becky Chen, notes that your most significant accomplishment is your work on language and literacy development. What do you see are the needs for future research in these areas of language and literacy development in which emerging scholars might contribute?
Well, language and literacy is a huge topic, and yet you can deal with it productively in many ways. One way, which is well understood in reading research, is how children come to be able to hear the small elements of sound that are significant, that allow them to distinguish the words and other significant units of their language. This is the topic that's gotten the most attention from reading researchers in the West. So we have 30 or 40 years with 100 studies a year. It's the only area in which the sheer quantity and momentum of research would be comparable to that in the biological or physical sciences. And a lot has been learned there. Now, I have not contributed to that body of research in the English language. One direction I went was to take another language, less studied at the time we began, Chinese, with a different oral language, different spoken language, and a different writing system. And was among those who tried to see, well, will the same principles that allow us to map Western languages onto writing systems and learn what the crucial understandings children must have, will that also work for Chinese? And it's a long story that I won't try to repeat here, but the overall story is similar. But the particular elements of sound you've got to pay attention to are different. The writing system represents sound in a different way, and a not very transparent way in the case of Chinese. And there's a feature of sound that that we don't have to pay attention to in English. It's highly significant in Chinese, the so-called tone. So you, if I say ma, that means mother. If I say ma,
okay,
horse.
Oh, all right, interesting. A different way of understanding and speaking that. Okay, so we have another one from a bit of a blast from the past. Tell us about your 1972 study, How to Construct Achievement Tests to Assess Comprehension. So this is related to these complexities and intricacies.
You're asking me to talk about a study almost 50 years old.
Yes, I know. A blast from the past.
It was my attempt to provide a systematic ground for deciding whether or not a test item reflected comprehension or not. Okay. And I used a linguistic analysis. If the meaning is about the same but the words are different, then it must be assessing comprehension. And it provided some basis for others. I didn't do very much with it after the 1972 paper, which I think was in the Review of Educational Research. But several others have built on that idea and developed, perhaps made improvements in our ability to, on the basis for assessing comprehension, based on those ideas that I introduced at that time.
Do you think that current tests are capable of assessing comprehension and all the complexities that are built into that?
No, I don't really. Okay. I feel a major lack of high-stakes standardized tests is they're locked into the same task every time. Read a STEM and choose among 4 alternatives. And life is not a multiple choice. So a feature of my work for a number of years now is we don't use that kind of test to evaluate whether instruction is working with children.
What do you use?
We use extended writing. Children write essays. And we have face-to-face tasks where the child responds to an examiner.
Sure. Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to vocabulary growth and development. Tell us more about your work here in this area of research.
Well, listen, vocabulary growth and development has been a theme in my throughout my career. So I started working on this. I could trace it back to the 1960s. In a paper in 1980 that's well known, we ask, what is it that a vocabulary test assesses? And we distinguish between, well, it taps into knowledge of the world you have. For example, a child who knows a relatively rare word like spinnaker, no doubt will know some other words like bow, starboard.
Sure.
And why is that? It's because they have an acquaintance with the pastime of sailing. So that educators had the order of things. First you learn the words, then you can learn the subject matter. But is that the way you learn to sail?
Right.
Do you sit down and memorize spinnaker, starboard, bow, boom?
So that's some of the beginning, well, historically, some of the beginning research in terms of bias in tests as well. Would you say that that's true?
Well, we could wonder whether or not, certainly, children from different ethnic groups and when stratified by social class, if we take the typical child from a low literate, poor home, they're going to get far less exposure to vocabulary.
Sure. They're not definitely
And
working with spinnakers.
Right, they're not working with spinnakers. Seldom.
Seldom. And this Geographic as well. I know students in Arizona.
It'll be Geographic.
Yeah.
So if we could pick children whose mothers were hotel maids, who lived in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and who lived in Edmonton, Alberta. Some might know, those from Halifax might know Spinnaker. Those from Edmonton, I doubt it.
I doubt it, right, exactly. Okay, so now thinking about that research in the current context as well, what are some of your ideas in terms of how technology is influencing that, helping that, inhibiting it
I am not against technology in education, but it's not I have not spent much time on technology. I am trying to see what I can do to advance face-to-face education.
Okay.
So I could speculate, but it would be idle about technology and education.